Imagine a young lawyer from a sugar plantation who would grow to challenge the most powerful nation on earth, surviving over 600 assassination attempts while transforming a small Caribbean island into a global symbol of resistance and revolution. He did not just lead a country, he ignited a movement that reshaped Cold War geopolitics, inspired liberation struggles across 3 continents, and forced the world to confront the complex realities of sovereignty, ideology, and human rights. This is the extraordinary reality of a man whose name became synonymous with defiance, whose speeches could last for hours, and whose unwavering conviction turned a modest guerrilla campaign into one of the most consequential political phenomena of the 20th century. His journey from the privileged estates of eastern Cuba to the corridors of global power is a masterclass in strategic patience, ideological commitment, and the profound costs of revolutionary change. To understand his legacy is to understand the turbulent history of Latin America, a landscape permanently altered by a leader who refused to bend to external pressure and paid the price in isolation, controversy, and enduring admiration. The genesis of this unparalleled political phenomenon began in the summer of 1926 on the sprawling sugar plantation of Bern, located in the rugged, fertile province of Orient in eastern Cuba. Born Fidel Alejandro Castro rose into a wealthy land-owning family, his early environment was defined by agricultural abundance, social hierarchy, and the stark inequalities that characterized Cuban society under foreign influence. His father, a Spanish immigrant who had built a successful agricultural enterprise, instilled in his children a strong work ethic, competitive spirit, and awareness of the economic structures that governed their world. Despite his privileged upbringing, young Fidel developed a keen sensitivity to the injustices faced by rural laborers, a perspective that would later fuel his political convictions. He received his early education at Jesuit schools, where he excelled academically and athletically, developing the rhetorical skills, physical stamina, and disciplined mindset that would serve him throughout his revolutionary career. His enrollment at the University of Havana in the 1940s marked a decisive turning point, exposing him to radical political thought, anti-imperialist ideology, and the vibrant student activism that characterized Cuban intellectual life during a period of political instability and foreign domination. His transition from a passionate student activist to a committed revolutionary occurred through a series of formative experiences that hardened his resolve and refined his strategic thinking. After earning his law degree, he began practicing in Havana, focusing on cases that highlighted government corruption, social inequality, and the exploitation of the Cuban people by foreign interests. The political landscape of Cuba during this period was marked by authoritarian rule, electoral fraud, and deepening economic dependence on the United States, conditions that fueled widespread discontent among intellectuals, workers, and the rural poor. Fidel Castro emerged as a vocal critic of the regime, using legal channels, public speeches, and underground organizing to build support for systemic change. When peaceful avenues for reform proved futile, he concluded that armed revolution was the only viable path to liberation. In 1953, he led a daring but ultimately unsuccessful assault on the Moncada barracks, a military installation that symbolized the oppressive power of the Batista government. Although the attack failed and resulted in imprisonment, it provided Castro with a national platform, transforming him from a local activist into a symbol of resistance. His defense speech, later published as History Will Absolve Me, articulated a comprehensive vision for social justice, national sovereignty, and economic independence that would become the ideological foundation of the revolutionary movement. Following his release from prison and a period of exile in Mexico, Castro dedicated himself to organizing a guerrilla force capable of challenging the Cuban government through sustained armed struggle. He assembled a small but determined group of revolutionaries, including his brother Raúl and the Argentine physician Ernesto Che Guevara, and embarked on a perilous journey back to Cuba aboard the yacht Granma. The initial landing in December 1956 was disastrous, with most of the expeditionary force killed or captured by government troops. Castro and a handful of survivors retreated into the rugged Sierra Maestra Mountains, where they began a protracted guerrilla campaign that would gradually erode the legitimacy and military capacity of the Batista regime. Over the course of 2 years, the rebel forces expanded their influence through a combination of military tactics, political organizing, and strategic communication that resonated with rural populations disillusioned by government neglect and repression. Castro's leadership during this period was characterized by personal courage, tactical flexibility, and an unwavering commitment to the revolutionary cause, qualities that inspired loyalty among his followers and attracted growing support from urban intellectuals, students, and disaffected members of the middle class. The culmination of the revolutionary struggle arrived in the final days of 1958, when a series of decisive military victories and widespread popular uprisings forced the Batista government to collapse. Castro and his forces entered Havana in triumph in January 1959, marking the beginning of a new era in Cuban history. The early years of the revolutionary government were marked by sweeping reforms aimed at addressing the structural inequalities that had long plagued Cuban society. Land redistribution programs transferred agricultural holdings from foreign corporations and wealthy elites to peasant farmers, literacy campaigns dramatically reduced illiteracy rates, and universal healthcare initiatives established a medical system that would eventually become a model for developing nations. However, these domestic achievements were accompanied by increasing political centralization, the suppression of dissent, and the consolidation of power within a single-party structure that limited democratic participation and civil liberties. Castro's vision of revolutionary transformation prioritized social equity and national sovereignty over pluralistic governance, a choice that generated both admiration and criticism from observers around the world. The geopolitical dimensions of Castro's leadership became defining features of his legacy as Cuba navigated the treacherous waters of Cold War politics. The United States, viewing the Cuban Revolution as a threat to its regional influence and ideological interests, responded with economic sanctions, covert operations, and diplomatic isolation aimed at undermining the new government. Castro, in turn, sought strategic partnerships with the Soviet Union, establishing a relationship that provided economic support, military assistance, and ideological solidarity, but also entangled Cuba in the broader dynamics of superpower confrontation. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, as the deployment of Soviet missiles on Cuban soil triggered a tense standoff between Washington and Moscow. Castro's role in the crisis revealed both his strategic boldness and his willingness to accept extraordinary risks in defense of Cuban sovereignty, qualities that cemented his reputation as a fearless adversary of American hegemony. Throughout the Cold War, Cuba under Castro's leadership became a beacon for anti-colonial movements, providing training, resources, and ideological inspiration to revolutionary groups across Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Domestically, Castro's governance was characterized by a complex interplay of social achievement and political constraint. The Cuban education and healthcare systems achieved remarkable outcomes, with literacy rates approaching 100% and life expectancy rivaling that of developed nations. Cultural policies promoted artistic expression and national identity, while sports programs produced world-class athletes who brought international prestige to the island. Yet these accomplishments coexisted with restrictions on political freedom, limitations on economic opportunity, and periodic crackdowns on dissent that drew condemnation from human rights organizations and democratic governments. Castro defended these measures as necessary protections against external subversion and internal counter-revolution, arguing that the survival of the revolutionary project required vigilance and discipline in the face of persistent hostility from powerful adversaries. This tension between social progress and political authoritarianism remains a central feature of debates about his legacy, reflecting the broader complexities of revolutionary governance in an unequal and interconnected world. As the Cold War receded and global politics shifted in the post-Soviet era, Castro adapted his strategies to navigate new challenges while maintaining the core principles of his revolutionary vision. The collapse of the Soviet Union deprived Cuba of its primary economic partner, triggering a period of severe hardship known as the Special Period, during which the government implemented pragmatic reforms to sustain the economy without abandoning socialist commitments. Castro's leadership during this crisis demonstrated his resilience and capacity for strategic adjustment, as he balanced ideological fidelity with practical necessity to preserve the revolutionary state. In later years, he gradually delegated administrative responsibilities to younger leaders while remaining an influential voice in national and international affairs. His retirement from formal office in 2008 marked the end of an era, but his ideas, symbolism, and historical presence continued to shape Cuban politics and inspire admirers around the world. The personal dimensions of Castro's life reflected the intensity and contradictions of his public role. He maintained a demanding schedule well into his later years, delivering lengthy speeches, engaging in detailed policy discussions, and staying informed about global developments through extensive reading and correspondence. His relationships with family, colleagues, and international figures were marked by loyalty, intellectual engagement, and occasional conflict, revealing a multifaceted individual whose private humanity coexisted with his public persona as a revolutionary icon. Despite the controversies surrounding his governance, Castro remained a figure of profound fascination, respected by allies and adversaries alike for his intelligence, determination, and unwavering commitment to his vision of justice and sovereignty. The legacy of this extraordinary leader is permanently woven into the political and cultural fabric of the modern world. He fundamentally challenged the assumptions of Western dominance, proving that a small nation could assert its independence and pursue an alternative path of development despite immense external pressure. He inspired generations of activists, intellectuals, and leaders who saw in his example a model of resistance, self-determination, and ideological conviction. From the sugar fields of his childhood to the global stages where he debated presidents and prime ministers, his journey remains a profound testament to the power of revolutionary vision, strategic patience, and the enduring appeal of anti-imperialist struggle. He did not just govern a country, he embodied a movement, leaving behind a legacy of transformation, controversy, and inspiration that will continue to shape debates about power, justice, and sovereignty for generations to come.